Hello everyone. Today we will be looking at the year 2020 thus far through the lens of astrology and presenting you two people who have, in my opinion, accurately predicted the events thus far. So as many of you know, I am a fan of Jyotish Star magazine, and we'll be talking about someone who made an appearance in that magazine and had some interesting things to say about the year 2020. Let's go to the e-magazine, and this is an online magazine. So this magazine ran from 2010 to 2017, and in every issue they feature a different or someone related to Vedic philosophy. In September of 2012, there was featured a person by the name of Yogini Shambhavi who had something to say about 2020. Before we go, note that this was the year 2012, in which people expected a lot of big stuff to happen. And that was the standard question in that year. What do you have to say about 2012? So, as everyone else was asked about around that time, Yogini Shambhavi was asked that question. Now, one thing about her, she comes from a fairly highly placed family in India, spiritually highly placed. She is an astrologer, among other things. Charlotte Benson conducted the interview, asks, do you have an opinion about the popularly expected Earth changes during 2012? Shambhavi responds, well, it is already more than halfway through 2012, and we have had some major ecological problems and weather changes. But as part of what we have been experiencing in recent years, a cumulative effect of sorts, but nothing apocalyptic. As for the major end of the world changes, I would not expect these this year, though certainly humanity is steadily plowing through much negative karma. Actually, after 2020 to around 2050, the situation will get much more arduous on our planet Earth, but not necessarily to the extent of the Earth changes some would forecast. What Vamadeva and I foresee is that an extended global time of troubles has begun, with a slowly increasing set of problems socially and environmentally impacting our lives, until we are forced to change our unsustainable civilization. Yet we would compare what will be coming in future decades, not to dramatic Earth changes or even world wars like the 20th century, but will include economic, political, environmental, and health problems of significant proportions and duration. A light on the other side will slowly emerge, but will not be a quick or easy process. So I read this back in 2012, and I always remembered this. And all through these years, I had in mind that 2020 would be a big deal, something major, kind of like what people were expecting in 2012, would come around in 2020. So when coronavirus came about, I said, okay, well, yeah, that Shambhavi was correct. I went back and read this, as I'm doing now, and noted that 2020 to 2050. So she got the start date right. And according to her, the effects of what's happening is going to play out for the next 30 years. I'll present one more person who had a pretty good prediction of what would happen in 2020. And that person goes by the name of Ganesh. Now, Ganesh is based in Belgium from an Indian family, and he is an astrologer. And he had some interesting things to say about 2020. Recently, he posted an article at his website about some predictions he made back in 5 years before, having to do with 2020, as far as his expecting major economic events, downturns in particular, around this time. So Ganesh points to the transit of Jupiter through Capricorn, tropical Capricorn, because even though Ganesh is from India, he uses the tropical zodiac. And Jupiter entered tropical Capricorn, where it debilitates in early December of last year. Ganesh points out that Jupiter is going to be in the same sign as Saturn, Pluto, and then the Sun will join it, and then later on Mars. And also you have K2. So you have all these malefic influences joining a debilitated Jupiter, and Jupiter would be severely afflicted. Among the things that Jupiter rules is economy. So Ganesh was expecting major economic changes in this year. And notice how most people around the world are being affected not directly through illness, but through the economic shutdown, the consequences, economic consequences of the shutdown. Jupiter being the karaka for, or indicator for finance. So he writes a lot in this article. I'll just point out a few things. So he says, all these planetary influences in the sign of Capricorn made me feel that the big showdown was lined up for 2020. And he shares some of his writings that he wrote on Yahoo College Study Group, which he shares down here. And when he was making the predictions, he wasn't mentioning health stuff, but he certainly got the economic stuff right, which is based on the health. And notice that viruses and bacteria, they're ruled by K2, the unseen world, which is heavily involved. He talks about the axis of Rahu, K2 being involved in viruses, along with Mars. So further, we'll go down and see what else he had to say. He talks about also the eclipses of December 26th and January 10th, 2020, as being very significant, and connects that with the coronavirus timeline. So to begin the coronavirus timeline, I go back to the first known case of coronavirus, which dates back, according to this website, livescience.com, to November 17th. So curiously, I go back to November 17th, 2019, see what was happening astrologically in the sky. So on November 17th, we have the moon joining Rahu. First case is reported. First case of coronavirus is reported. Moon transits Rahu. So next on our timeline is the eclipse of December 26th or 25th. Jupiter already being in Capricorn and even combust with the Sun at 4 degrees. Jupiter 5 degrees, Sun 4 degrees, and here is passing through there for an eclipse along with Saturn and Pluto. All these, and K2 as well. So all these negative influences, Mars not far away, a massive alignment of very serious influences lining up on Capricorn. When we look to our timeline, so on December 26th we had this eclipse, and the timeline from the New York Times is that a few days later, after the eclipse, 5 days later after the eclipse, the government in Wuhan, China, confirmed that health authorities were treating dozens of cases, and a new virus has been identified. So the next event is January 10th, another eclipse, this time Mars joining the party. Go look at that eclipse of January 10th, verify that indeed it did happen. This time, Moon joins Rahu. And remember, the last time we had Moon joining Rahu, at least in our timeline, was the first known case of coronavirus is reported. And now, Moon joins Rahu again, and we have, right after on January 11th, Chinese media reports the first known death from an illness caused by the virus. And here Ganesh writes about this. He says, points out that the first occurrence of the virus was on 17th of November, 2019. And the first death on account of the virus was on January 11th. One day after the eclipse of January 10th. The moon transits Rahu in November, first known case, and the moon transits Rahu again with the solar eclipse, first known death. And he points out that in 2020, we have 6 eclipses. And what comes next? He points to the months of May, June, July, and August of this year. The primary reason being that there are 3 eclipses lined up during those months. A lunar eclipse on June 5th and 6th, annual solar eclipses on June 21st, and a lunar eclipse on July 4th and 5th. Notice July 4th is America's date of independence. Well, he points out that the June 2021 eclipse will be important because it's a solar eclipse. The eclipse of December 26th 2019 was a solar eclipse, so the next important event is going to be the following solar eclipse of June 21. It is the day of the summer solstice, so look to the next big date to be the eclipse of June 2021.